This episode is brought to you by the PowerMonkey Training app. Now, out of all of the cool things that we do with PowerMonkey, whether that be our camps, or our retreats, or in-person events, the thing that I'm most excited about and our team is most excited about is our new PowerMonkey Training app. The new one will have a complete redesign and a lot of cool new features that you haven't been able to access yet. There's really four categories of training skills depending on who you are as an athlete. The first one is probably the one that you're most familiar with, are skill plans. How do you learn a strict pull-up, a handstand, a muscle-up? They're all assessment-based. We put you into the correct level according to what your starting point is, and you build plans from there. The couple new ones that we're really excited about, one is our volume plan. So volume plans will be based for those athletes that are learning capacity around skill-specific training. So if you're an athlete out there looking to take that one muscle up and build it into 3, 5, 10, 20, and beyond, we have a plan to help build capacity around skill-specific training. Very, very unique, very different, something that we're new offering, really excited about. Additionally, we have our GPP plan for gymnastics. We call it our monkey method plan. This is a well-rounded gymnastics plan that you can be accessing on a beginner, intermediate, or advanced level. Beginner and intermediate are 3 days a week. Our advanced is up to 6 days a week. You'll be doing handstands, mobility, core work, bar, ring. It's a well-rounded plan around becoming more capable and confident around gymnastics movements. Our last types of plans will be our 365 plans, and these are bite-sized plans that can be incorporated into any training plan, starting with our core 365, something that's been in the app for a while, but a new feature is that we're going to be putting up one workout a day for free on the app. All you need to do is download and register, and you will get a free workout every single day that is core specific, between 5 and 10 minutes long, that you can incorporate into your training. It's a great starting point, and there'll be more of these 365 plans that help create a more well-rounded training experience. Come train with us with the PowerMonkey Training app. We think you guys are going to love it. Welcome to the PowerMonkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Chad Vaughn, and on today's episode, we have a special one for you. This is a guest that both Chad and I are incredibly excited to be able to interview, someone that we both really respect within the space and look up to and think that he's one of the most incredible athletes that has come through the CrossFit ranks over the years. Here are just a few stats on him to help maybe figure out who the guest is. He's competed in the CrossFit Games 7 times. He has won the Spirit of the Games award. He has also finished on the podium once in the open division, as well as once as a masters athlete. He originally comes from the wrestling world, having competed collegiately in D1 wrestling, as well as having been a former seminar staff member, as well as being a CrossFit L4 trainer and an affiliate owner. This is none other than Mr. Chris Spealler himself, one of the icons within the CrossFit world. Chris is an amazing guy. Chris has also been out to PowerMonkey Camp with us, and the staff and the campers all fell in love with him. It's great to get Chris's perspective on CrossFit. He's been around so long, so he has such a unique perspective of how the sport has grown and where he thinks it can go next. We love talking about his programming, what is now called Spealler programming, but has gone through some different iterations. Love talking with Chris. He has such great insight, and we hope you guys enjoy it too. Well, Chris, what's up, my man? Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and chat today. How you doing? Of
I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
course, it's been a while since we actually saw you in person, and uh, I'm sure there's a million things that have been going on, but where are you right now? Are you in Utah? Are you home, enjoying the, I'm sure, crazy winter you got going on right now?
Yeah, so still in Park City, Utah, which is great. We've gotten pounded with snow the past week or so, but haven't had a chance to get out in it quite yet, but hoping to on Friday, get out to the bird and do some tram laps. But yeah, still here, Park City, running the gym, doing the online gig, and trying to progress and cruise.
So just touch on a little bit about, you said you got pounded by snow, and I think that's just like your favorite thing in the world. You seem to be, I was talking about with Jordan, you and maybe Matt Chan also come to mind as being two people within the CrossFit world, the functional fitness world, that actually fully embody the idea of using your fitness. I think you guys are always outdoors. You guys are always skiing or mountain biking or hiking or taking advantage of what being in the gym means. It's not about just doing an hour WOD and getting a workout and going home and feeling satisfied. I'm in the gym so that I can actually enjoy these other things I love to do. Would you say that's correct? Like, you're using CrossFit as a method for you to be able to actually enjoy other things?
Yeah, 100%. I still enjoy CrossFit. I still enjoy hard workouts and tinkering with training and programming and helping athletes process through that. But for me personally, that transition has been very much one where I really focus on trying to find that balance and skiing. And I love downhill mountain biking. I love dirt biking. And then there's just so much that there is to offer out west and where we live. We're very fortunate. But just giving my kids a chance to experience that too and facilitate that with them because that's so much of what I want to encourage them to do is get out and have some experience that adventure. So yeah, training is definitely shifting and has shifted for a long time now from a means to an end to be good at the sport of CrossFit to um, you know, it's a means to an end to be good at life and outside the gym.
And you didn't grow up with that yourself, right? I think you're an East Coast guy originally, and I mean, I can't imagine there's too many mountains in Pennsylvania where you're skiing or anything like that.
Yeah, so it's funny. I was born in Utah. My parents are from Pennsylvania, moved to Utah for work. And so I was born here, but my parents moved when I was really young, like I think less than 2, 3 months old. So they would take a lot of trips out west when we were kids. And I still remember being, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old and thinking, why do we live in Pennsylvania? What are we doing here? Like this sucks. I want to be in the mountains. So my childhood was great and I got to experience your typical sports and I'm really thankful for it because I got plugged into wrestling at a young age and being a smaller athlete, it was a really good fit. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, the life lessons learned, but it's funny because I have these conversations with my kids now, like, hey, you guys have no idea what's at your fingertips. They've got
Hmm.
Woodward is 5 minutes from their house. Our kids could ride
Hmm.
their bikes there, and they've got, foam pits and resi landings and tramps and 10,000-foot indoor skate parks and all this progressive stuff. And I would have killed to have it as a kid. So growing up, I would do a fair amount of skiing out west and then, the weekend trips and things like that. So there was an effort there, but it, it was very much appreciated because it wasn't a daily experience like it can be now.
I want to tell a little quick story about your kids. How old are your kids now, and how many do you have?
Oh goodness, I've got two. They're 12 and 10, almost 13 and 11 coming up in a couple months, which is
All
wild.
right. So this must have been a few years ago now, maybe 5, 6 years ago. They were, maybe 6 and 8, something like that. And we were at the trail run out in with Hoffy and
Yeah.
Hawaii, and amazing event that Hoffy puts on out there to raise some awareness around what's going on in the Poipu area and Kauai. And I remember me, my wife Sadie, and you and your wife and your kids were kind of paired up with us when we were kind of getting to start on the run. You probably don't remember this, but it's very like imprinted on both mine and my wife's memory. Being just lined up on that start line with you and your wife and your kids, and feeling like we were somewhat fit, and we started on this 10K run, and your kids just blew us out of the water. Like they were running like they were local kids, like shoes off, like shot out of a cannon. And my wife, like a few times, like had to slow your daughter down and be like, "Are you sure you don't need a little bit of a break?" It was embarrassing my daughter how incredibly athletic both your kids were. It seems like they were born like whatever you're doing with them, it's absolutely working. They seem to love the outdoors as much as you do.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been fun to help facilitate that for them for sure.
Now, let's get a little bit into the fitness side of things. Obviously, you're a legend within the space, and Jordan and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Also, you're both of our favorite athletes in the CrossFit space. You've always
Oh,
been kind
thanks, man.
of, yeah, man. I mean, one, I think I might have told you this when we did our first little video shoot at CrossFit like 10 years ago, whatever
Yeah,
that was. But how old are you now?
I'm 43.
40, are you an 80? You're
79, bro.
79. All right,
79.
79, 79. So you're 79 and Chad and I are both 80, so you're a year older than us, but you're my height and you're around my same weight.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, okay, this guy's basically my age, my weight, my height, and you're doing things that don't seem physically, humanly possible. I never understood how you were able to hit some of these numbers. So I'm just going to rattle some of these numbers off just so people can kind of get some perspective. So you're 5'5", you're
Yeah.
43 now. These be done probably, late 20s, early 30s. And you're between 135 and 145 weight wise, correct?
Yeah.
So back squat, 400 pounds, clean and jerk 290, snatch 235, deadlift 440, and that crazy ass number, max pull-ups 106 reps. I, these numbers are like bonkers. Like there's no letdown. Doesn't seem like there's an area of weakness for you. The question here is around that area of weakness. Did you ever feel like you were limited by one area? Was it your size that was your big limiting factor, and you feel like to overcome that to be able to compete with the Fronings out there? But what was your big limiting factor when it came to competing with those top other guys?
Yeah, 100% it was cycling barbells. So like I had a really good grasp on what I was capable of with certain loads within certain repetitions and even within movements that they were coupled with. But cycling heavy power cleans, 225 and heavier, cycling push jerks, 225 and higher, cycling deadlifts outside of 315. They were just that was that compounding effect that was really hard. And I just attacked that for probably 2 or 3 years to try to work to improve that because I knew I was never going to win the clean ladder. That just wasn't in the cards. It didn't matter how much I did. And if for some reason I did, I would never be able to make it to the games anyway. So the big emphasis was on, yes, bringing up 1 rep maxes, but mainly it was to improve things like how many times can you overhead squat 225 consecutively? How many times can you power clean 225? So that was a huge focus during my competition days for sure.
Chad, is that one of your challenges too, cycling heavy barbell?
Well, anything CrossFit is a challenge for me, Dave. If I do many reps, even with 95 pounds, it's, I get punched in the gut pretty quickly. As you well know, you can beat me on workouts with even 135 now. So.
No. You keep it under 100 pounds, I'll take you. Anything over 100 pounds, you got me. That's for sure.
But no, I enjoy it. I enjoy more and more through the years cycling the barbell or, cycling heavy, the heavy barbell. And in fact, a story that I will love the opportunity to bring up in talking about this, I wasn't cycling this, but with Asia Barto one year for Barbells for Boobs, we did Grace at 315. And I don't think I've ever fully recovered from that. So I'm glad I didn't try to cycle it, but of course Asia beat me pretty handily, but it was quite the experience. So.
Oh my God. All right, we're gonna do that at camp as our 10-year anniversary workout. No, you're gonna do it at camp.
I mean, it'll take me a lot of time and a lot of hard work to even be able to do 315 one time at this point, Dave. So
So
just do it over the course of the weekend. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you got a whole week.
Yeah,
you got a whole week.
There you go.
We had this bright idea to try to do a coach's workout at one of the camps last year. Jordan, when was it? And me and Jordan were like, what's a good challenge to kind of like put on the coaches to like, throughout the entire week, let's try to make. And Jordan, what do we come at? 2,500 rounds of Cindy? Is that what we had to do between?
Yeah, accumulated between all the coaches and staff.
So we were like, if we have 30 coaches there and we do it for 7 days, that comes out to like, I don't know, 15 to 20 rounds a day. Is that what it was? We were like,
I don't remember. It was something that made sense at the time in my head and your head, but it clearly was so outside of the realm of reality that everyone doesn't even want to hear what we have.
I've never been able to make sense of that.
We ended up getting to like 1,700 rounds and we were like, I think we're done. I think we're done. I don't think we're doing this anymore. It's like, this is ridiculous. So instead of crazy about the same, we're going to do a collective 315 Grace instead. So we'll do that at next camp. Considering I can't pick 315 up, I will be out of that workout. All right. So, Chris, what did you think of this year's games? It seems like the way that this one was structured, Boz definitely much more heavy on the gymnastics, body weight type stuff, more intricate when it came to skill work, a little bit less heavy barbell aside from that heavy jerk with the sprint workout or the sandbag clean. Seemed like it might have been in your wheelhouse a little bit if you were still competing. What'd you think of the structure?
Yeah, I saw a couple workouts and I thought, man, that would have been nice back then. But but yeah, I'm a huge fan of just watching people try to progress, and trying to push the envelope of both the sport and the athlete. And then also I think this fine balance of how do we do that within kind of the confines of what the athletes are capable and also what makes them, like, this might sound silly, but like what makes them look good. Like I want to test athletes when I think about programming for things, and I want to get them outside of their comfort zone, but I also don't want to pull them so far outside that it's it can have the potential to make them look kind of silly or something like that. And I'm not saying that happened at the games, but things that I think sometimes there's this fine line of how do we create this really cool and really great test, and then when does it spill over into something that feels like a little bizarre, a little bit outside of something that even just everybody could relate to in the gym. I think there's a really special thing that happens when you see athletes that do something at a comp like the games, and everybody at the gym level can somehow oddly relate to it. That makes, I think, for a really cool event for both athlete and spectator. And so those are things that I like to see. And I understand the games as a test, a long test, but some of the stuff I really loved was I really love the strongman stuff, the Capitol, where they're carrying the sandbags. I think things like that are really cool. I'm a huge fan because I love bikes, of adding cycling into workouts, because it's not a difficult test for people to figure out. So I really like those things. But again, I think it's finding that balance. And the important piece for me, if I'm doing something like that, is, hey, if we went too far one way or another, how do we learn from that and evolve? And I think that's something that Boz and CrossFit have a good handle on, and they've always done. Anytime I feel like I've seen them swing too far one way, they've seemed to have learned from it and adapted the following years.
Mm-hmm. Now, there were a couple of exercises in there where I think maybe we did see athletes who, these are the top athletes in the world, and they struggle on what's considered to be a fairly basic movement, whether that's a single under or, a new movement, jump double with a cross or whatever it might be. Something that maybe they should have been exposed to, or as in a case of a single under, they should be able to do, but then it makes them look like, hey, how are you not able to do this in this type of a test? Do you think that there's any value in, now I know that CrossFit is all about this idea of being unknowable when it comes to the workout and game situation specifically, but something like the IF3 is doing, where they give you a booklet and say, within this year of competition, you're going to have all of these skills at some point. So you have the standards, you have the ability to know what might come up, you have the ability to work on them and become proficient at them. You don't know how it's going to be structured. You still have the unknowable component of the workout in terms of how it's put together, but you at least have the judges on the same page in terms of what to look for from a judging perspective. And you have the athletes saying, okay, maybe I've never tried this before, but I can give it a try, so that if it comes up, I'm at least somewhat coherent when it comes to it. Do you think there's any value with that? Or from a CrossFit perspective, is unknowable still just in that sense such a key component?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I don't know that I know the answer to that question yet, but I do think that you've been around the sport or the training method for as long as we have, or, I guess maybe speaking for me, as long as I feel like I have. It's going on 16, 17 years, that despite variance and variety and unknown and unknowable, it can all still sort of feel the same. There's only so many combinations we can do. There's only so many thrusters, or combined with this or that, or an EMOM or an AMRAP or a pyramid or a. So I think the effort there is to increase those bounds of exposing athletes to unknown and unknowable. But I do think that, at some point it does cross over and tip into this movement that becomes, I think, like really uncommon. And I've seen some things posted online that I'm like, that, and this isn't from CrossFit, but I've seen some other events where I'm like, that doesn't look anything like CrossFit to me. Like, whatever those movements are, and it's great, it's awesome, like the people can do that stuff, but to me, I feel like it's turned into something else than it was originally intended. And I actually think in some ways that the sport of CrossFit, and this isn't a knock on it, this happened, I think, when I was there, has become actually like a specific thing in and of itself. I think that to be a high level CrossFit athlete and to be at the games, it's oddly turned into a specialist thing. And by that, I mean that athletes within these parameters, and although they might be a larger scope than a marathon runner or a power lifter, they're very specific at that. And one thing that I think would be really cool to test, and I think they tried to do that this year a little bit, but I don't know that there's a really good way to test this with the program because I don't think the program requires it for a competition, is athleticism. So I think we test work capacity really well and we find who's really fit. But I think that's different than athleticism. And that's where I think personally that the community of CrossFit and gyms can embrace that by that last sentence of World Class Fitness in 100 Words that Glassman wrote is learn and play new sports. That exposes and gives us athleticism. But if I'm going to be the best in the world at CrossFit, guess what I can't do? Get good at riding my dirt bike and go win the Idaho City 100. We have to be, probably just like you experienced, Chad, like if you're going to try to go to the Olympics and win a medal, you have to be all in and you have to be unbalanced. It can't work. It can't work that way. I feel like that's an odd conversation because so much of CrossFit is the unknown and the unknowable and prepared for everything and the jack of all trades and the master of none. But I think the specificity of competition has shown itself versus the general portion of fitness that it can offer athleticism to.
Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I was just wondering, curious as to what are some tests that you would see as testing athleticism. I mean, what comes to mind is, I think they've done some sprinting before, but maybe a specific sprint or standing broad jump or a max height box jump, something like that. Is that what you're getting at?
I think it's the ability to adapt toward like your environment. The one that I think was the most that exposed it immediately was the obstacle course at Pendleton. I remember watching Kenny Leverich run through that and being like, that guy is an athlete. Like that was a display of athleticism, the way he moved and the efficiency through it. And again, not like a knock on him, but that looked very different than Jason Khalipa. Like Jason's a workhorse. The dude's a beast, right? But it showed. So I think like that, or the ability to, and this is, part of what they test, the ability to pick something up quickly by like watching someone do something and then performing that same thing. But I think that happens through sport. I think that happens through more activities that require balance and like a three-dimensional type environment where you're getting more feedback. I think about riding my bike. When I'm riding a trail, the feedback that I get from the trail differs constantly. Where, if I'm in a workout and I have this kind of linear piece where it goes from a barbell to a pull-up to an echo bike, it's very, like, got it. Like we got this movement, we're going to stay in the frontal plane, we're going to find efficiency and where you don't have that kind of feedback. Like if I'm on skis and I'm skiing powder and like the conditions change, but I want to hit this jump and there's a drop over here. And that I think can only be done by sport.
Yeah, it makes me think we should just throw a pickleball tournament in the middle of the CrossFit Games.
I'm going to play later today.
Let's
Absolutely.
do it.
Let's go do it.
I think it's great. Let's go.
Yeah.
I don't know it can be tested. I don't know that that's something that can be tested in at the CrossFit Games, and that's okay, right? But looking at the way that we train, like what are we training for in the gym? Are we training to try to really, like realistically, are we trying to be good at CrossFit or are we trying to be good at life? And so if you're trying to be good at life, I think you should start to introduce things that improve your athleticism.
Yeah, this is interesting. When you were competing early on in the early stages of what CrossFit was, you were all athletes that came from other sports, right? And you picked CrossFit up and you were, a former wrestler that used the grit that you found in that sport to be able to display it in a new way. Or, throwing with baseball, whatever it was, you guys were all coming from a variety of different sports to become. This next generation of CrossFit athletes are growing up with CrossFit, not having ball sports, hand-eye coordination, mountain biking, these other backgrounds, and then applying them to CrossFit. They're in the CrossFit gym. They're doing WODs. They're becoming exposed to exactly what you're talking about. just being in the gym rather than being exposed to the way that you kind of got into the sport. Do you think that that will be a limiting factor in their growth in the sport, or do you think that at some point, because I'm always recommending athletes play other things, like go, like, especially for my kids too, like I want you to play as many sports as possible. Don't specialize early. And I know that's kind of like the thing right now, become a specialist as early as possible, and it ends up burning out these athletes super, super early. Do you think that the athletes that are now kind of coming up with CrossFit as their main sport are potentially limiting their long-term growth potential because they don't have exposure to other things?
Not in the CrossFit competition world, unless the test changes, but in life experience, yes, for sure. And I think the same could be said of any specialist. I know, a variety of sports where kids get plugged in at an early age. And I do think that the faster we become specialists, the more we start to lose out on experiences and just being a more well-rounded athlete later on in life. So the same could be said for anything, but as of now, unless that test changes, I don't think it does. But that's also where I think we need to be really mindful of people that program for a general population, is what's the purpose of what we're doing? Is it to just make them good at CrossFit, or is it to make them good at life, have longevity, and still see improvements within, the barbell lifts and the benchmarks and things like that they do care about?
Well, let's talk about that programming a little bit. You have your Park City gym out there. You've had it for quite a while. I think is one of the first 150 affiliates. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
So, you're obviously early on. You've been an owner and a programmer of that gym for quite some time, and you have your own programming. And it seems like I've had some different iterations over the years. Went from grunt work to icon athletes, now Spiel programming. What's the intention behind it, and who is it primarily for? Would you say, as a general user, or are you trying to get someone prepared for a specific competition or something like that?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, it's evolved so much over time, and largely just on things that I've learned, things that I'm passionate about. But when we first started, it was one of 3 online programs that were out there that was really geared toward helping people get to regionals and want to go to the games. So that was the first iteration. Then we were like, hey, well, how do I create this opportunity where people can experience this that aren't trying to do that? And then so that shifted, and even within the past, I would say year and a half, I've really thought hard about what is it that we're doing. I really believe that there is a better way to provide structure, context, and methods to help people do CrossFit long term. 20 years ago, we all sat around and said, man, I wonder if we're going to be able to do this, for 20 years and then another 20 years. And we're there, but I don't think anyone's really asking that question. And I'm willing to answer that and say, no, you can't do it like that. Like, I'm okay with that, saying that, hey, I don't think that you can go in the gym and do 3-on, 1-off, constantly high intensity work every day, lift heavy once a week. I personally have found that that is not sustainable for myself, nor is it sustainable for the population of people that I've worked with over the past 16 years. So what we've tried to do is, instead of looking at workouts and saying, well, hey, this is the method, it's just constantly varied functional movement, high intensity, is really staying true to the roots of what we've found that are really valuable, right? Because we've learned a lot from CrossFit. The community is outstanding. The training method absolutely works for a time, but I do think there is a crossroads. And I think if we can, instead of bumping into that crossroads, have a better conversation up front, then we can have a longer journey and actually do it for a lifetime. So we've taken this approach of starting to look at athletes as they come in the door and helping them understand what they look like through some simple assessments, through flexibility and strength balance tests. And it's not complicated stuff. Through some conditioning tests, and then taking workouts. And instead of just saying, hey, do less weight, less reps, or shorter time, is actually looking at like movement patterns. What can we do? What might not be appropriate for you? Or what goals do you have? Some people might not ever have a desire to do a muscle up. And that's okay. We can still build upper body strength. Some people might not ever have the desire to get good at Olympic lifting, and that's okay. We can still develop power and speed. Some people might want to go to the CrossFit Games, right? But we have to have a conversation with them up front. We have to have a better understanding, and we have to be able to modify things based off of movement function and not just, well, hey, Dave, why don't you just use lighter weight on the overhead squat today? Like my shoulder, I can't snatch anymore. So if someone just says to me, hey, Chris, just use lighter weight, I'm like, well, that's still not appropriate for me. And now I've lost the stimulus of the workout. So like, give me more. But we aren't taught what the more is. And so that's what I've been working on developing. And that's what I work on offering with the online. That was a long answer. Sorry.
No, it's a great answer. And I think it's the kind of thing that athletes need. My follow-up to that is that's difficult to do. Like, so difficult to do in the sense that, you know, if you're an individual and you're working with an individual, that's much more feasible because you can take that assessment, you can see where the sticky points are, and you can say, okay, here are my recommendations in terms of other movement patterns or what might be, you know, according to your goals and your ability, let's figure that out. But in a class setting, how would you do that, right? You need an extremely high level coaching staff that really understands movement patterns well to be able to on the fly be able to say, okay, we have 20 people in a class, this is the prescribed workout, but everyone is doing some variation of this that's different.
Yeah.
Is the impetus on the coach, or is it teaching the athlete this idea of athlete ownership? Something that Chad and Chris Hinshaw and I talk a lot about with our programming and the things that we work on, this idea of we pass it on to the athletes as much as possible so that they have a sense of ownership around what they deem to be correct for them, so that it takes it out of the hands a little bit on the coach and says, okay, we'll take you there, but you as an athlete also need to start figuring some of these things out. Do you find that to be kind of the point where you as a coach or you and your staff are able to implement this at a higher level?
I think it's a great question. And I think it's both. Yes, I do think that athletes have to have an understanding of they could essentially be a different version of themselves each day they walk in the gym. They need to be responsible with what kind of intensity and volume they can handle today. So I quote a buddy of mine, Spencer Nix, says to his gym, and we use it here a lot, is don't do anything today that will keep you from coming in tomorrow. So helping people understand that. Now, here's the reality of the situation, though. The culture that we've created over the past 16 years does not think like that. And I say this out of just a love and transparency, but that's not the culture that CrossFit created from the start. It was you die for points, you put it on the whiteboard, and that's what you do. And so that shift is really hard, right? And it doesn't devalue intensity. It doesn't mean that functional movements aren't beneficial. But what we do is we break it down into 3 categories. So instead of us having, you know, the workout and then a scaled version where it's lighter weight, is we take care of the function. So we put it into 3 categories. One would be ballistic. Ballistic is anything where you're decelerating weight, right? So this would be most movements in CrossFit. Like it could be everything from a squat clean to a kipping pull up to a box jump, right? We have to decelerate. It's the most demanding. So the next version of that workout that we put on our whiteboard, we just call it low impact. So instead of a box jump, what's the intention of a box jump in most CrossFit workouts? Is to increase the heart rate. It's not so much to work plyometric stuff, because if we're doing 50 reps, right? So then we'll look at maybe saying, hey, instead of the box, we want you guys to do effort of calories on the bike of similar time, right? And then instead of the squat clean, I want you to do a front squat. And maybe that is a tempo front squat for today. And then instead of the kipping pull-up, I'm going to have you do a strict pull-up, or maybe we're going to do a bent over dumbbell row. And then we have what we call a recovery version. And this is taking it down a tier from ballistic to dynamic would be low impact. And then isometric would be recovery. So now I'm saying, okay, instead of the pull-up, I want you to do a static hold with your chest at the rings. Or maybe it's a tempo ring row. And instead of the squat clean, maybe I'm having Chad do a split squat hold or a wall sit. And instead of the pull-up, or sorry, instead of the box jump, again, we could have that cardio element, but have it be at a lower tempo or a lower pace. So we'll actually write in our workouts, we use RPE, rate of perceived exertion. We use a scale of 1 to 10. And we'll just tell people intentionally, like bike at an RPE of 5 of 10. So this is our way of taking it to the next step. And then what I'm trying to do is help coaches and communities embrace this and say, okay, now we've got actually like tools to do this with. And I don't have to wonder like, gosh, what do I give Dave? Like, what do I do? It's no, here's the process. It goes from ballistic to dynamic to isometric. And that could be for the entire workout that you need changed based off how they feel that day. Or that might just be subbing out a movement. You might be doing great with the box jump and the pull up, but your hips and knees bug you with the squat clean. So we do an isometric hold. And that is where I think we need to start to think outside the box of maybe what we've been taught and really start to get our head around what's it mean to coach? What's it mean to serve people? How do we do the right thing today so they can come back tomorrow? How do we fix imbalances? How do we set them up for success? So that's a huge part of what we do. That's how we write our workouts. That's how we offer them now, both online and in the gym. And we're starting to help gyms with that as well.
How's the response? Go ahead, Chad.
No, I mean, just digging into individualization, and we just talked to a few other coaches out there, kind of digging into the same kind of thing, and I love it, and I think it's appropriate, and I think it's necessary. Again, most of all for health and longevity of the people that are doing CrossFit. That's what I think most of them are in there for. And you're talking about being kind of changing the culture and being okay with working out without the clock, maybe sometimes being less intense instead of going in balls to the wall every single day. And one of the things that you've also said is being better at introducing people to CrossFit or athletes to CrossFit. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. But this is all coming from, you're talking about all these things from the perspective of someone who was a very fierce competitor who would have died for points in a better time. And I'm just wondering, at what point in your athletic career, coaching career, did you come to these realizations of individualizations, being okay with being less intense? And, another thing that you've talked about is being better at introducing athletes to CrossFit.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an evolution over the years. And I worked for some of our staff, and I was all in with the method. I really believed in it and still do believe in a lot of it. But man, I thought it was like absolutely bulletproof for a while. But it's okay that it's not. Like it's okay that we can make it better, and it's okay that we can try to progress it so that people can do it for another 10 or 15 years, or so that we can set affiliates up for success, and to do it in a manner that's respectful of where we've come from. I think people have tried to do this before, but they've looked at it and just kind of like pushed CrossFit to the side and poo-pooed, and CrossFit's bad, and this is the best way to do it. And I think that's really foolish and kind of short-sighted. There's some great things about it, but hey, if we want gyms to be around for a long time, I believe they need more tools. I've just learned that personally, that path is not sustainable. It's just not. And I've seen it here in the gym because we have athletes that have been with us for 15 years. So if they started with us when they're 45, now they're 60. That looks really different. If they started when they're 20 and now they're 35, their lifestyle has changed, that looks different. And we need to find better ways to address that based off of kind of what I feel like are really overarching themes that, yes, they make sense, but they don't give us anything to do. So it would be, well, yeah, it's based off your physiological and psychological tolerances. Well, that's cool, but like, what does that really mean on a day-to-day application? Well, mechanics, consistency, and intensity. Well, yeah, I get it. That's cool, but like most people aren't going to pay attention to that because the culture is die for points. So finding ways to create a method and a system that people can do it and change the culture in the gym so that they can do it and so that they can still work out hard and have intensity, but they earn the right to do that as opposed to just being jumped into it. So, yeah, it's been a personal process and what I've seen for athletes in my gym over the past decade and a half as well.
Yeah, and you talk about honoring the roots of CrossFit, and I wonder if you have any specific ways that you feel you do that, or suggestions for maybe other coaches or athletes that are leaning more towards what you're talking about, being okay with being less intense and stuff like that. Because, there are a few things here and there that I don't 100% agree that go on within the methods, whether that be a movement that they're teaching a certain way, or a way that I think that CrossFit could do better at teaching certain movements initially. But I love CrossFit. I love CrossFit. Like, the definition of love I know what that is because of the way that I feel about CrossFit for so many reasons. So I will speak in ways that, just like you do, Chris, that I'm not at all bashing CrossFit whatsoever, because it's changed so many people's lives. But talking specifically about, um, the root of CrossFit, how do you honor the root of CrossFit and still make the changes that you're trying to implement?
Yeah, so I don't think intensity is bad. I just think it needs to be done at the right time in the right place. I think their definition of functional movements is great, but I don't think that we have to do them all the time. I think by the definition of functional movement under CrossFit standards, we could do movements that would be labeled non-functional that are still beneficial to people. I think that instead of having someone come into a group class and having that assessment be, hey, come on in and, scale by load, reps, and time, and let's just all throw down. I don't think that's appropriate. And so there are things that I think, if I change the definition of like how I do CrossFit or how I program it, it would probably be like mostly varied, mostly functional movements executed at a variety of intensities throughout the week or a month, depending on how the athlete feels on a day to day. It's not going to sound as nice. But the point being is that like we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot of valuable things. People have gotten incredibly fit. People have changed their lives. They've met an incredible community. I do think that the education that CrossFit provides for actual coaching inside of a box, bar none, I haven't seen anything else like a level 2 or anything like that that's practical application for coaches. But what I do think is missing is 20 years later is that mindset of like, what do we do to make this better? Like, how do we make this better? And this is going to sound silly. It doesn't bother me to talk about this, but like, I don't think Glassman was the face for CrossFit. I don't think he was a great face for CrossFit. And, there were all sorts of things that made that challenging. But the one thing he had going for him is the guy would question his own method. And so he would sometimes be the first person to be like, you know what? Man, I wish I wouldn't have put kipping pull-ups or burpees in workouts. I really don't like those. Or what if we tried this? Or what if we did that? He was just, I think, wired like that. And I've been a bit removed, so this is just my perspective. Take it with a grain of salt because I've been removed from HQ for years now. I haven't worked with them for 6 years. Again, great people. 8 years since I've been there. But what I think, has maybe gotten lost is that I think they have a method that Glassman wrote, and the level 1 is identical to when I taught it at least last time I went to one. So it's kind of like hit the play button and let's go. But man, that's where I think these conversations are so valuable. It's like, what do we need to do to progress the community in a positive way and have it be inclusive and not say, hey, I'm doing this right at Park City Fit and everybody else is wrong. Like that's garbage. Come on, but like, how do we give people tools to better do that and express it in manners that make sense in their gym with the culture they have and the community they have? And that's what we're trying to do. It's not an easy feat, but I'm not afraid to try it and continue to revise it again and again to try to provide that.
Yeah, you have to. Anything that's going to be great or even anywhere near reach its potential, you have to constantly question it. And I think, you saying that about that's the way Glassman was, and it makes perfect sense to me why CrossFit is what it is, why it is so successful, and why it has changed so many lives is because he sat there and questioned it, examined himself, experimented, and that's what we all need to be doing. And I love what you're doing here, Chris. But you're bringing back memories of I remember teaching on ramps and owning a CrossFit gym and coaching CrossFit classes, and trying to create these on ramp programs that there was really not a lot of direction on, I would say. You know what I'm saying? I don't feel like there was enough direction from CrossFit on how to really truly on ramp someone that hasn't done anything athletic since high school, and maybe they're 40, 50 years old, and those kind of things. And I think we figured things out and did a decent job. But a lot of times, because one, me getting lazy and kind of tired of the same old thing, and the pushback and what other people were doing, what other coaches and what other gyms were doing, just letting people get into class on their first day. And, you know, whatever that workout was, we made it work. And it just brings back those memories. And definitely there's a better way than that.
Yeah. And like, what a cool process to go through. Like, what great memories, you know,
Yeah.
like what, like a wild time, totally the Wild West of the fitness landscape, you
Right.
know? But I think the really cool thing the thing that I really love about the roots of CrossFit, for those who've been around the message board, was like this crazy stew pot of stuff where people weren't concerned about just improving their grace time or their Fran time. They were just like really experimenting. People would, I remember seeing people be like, yeah, I tried Fran with a sandbag today. I just wanted to change it up. Or like, you know, like you would see crazy stuff. And it wasn't so much about just constantly improving their benchmark, but it was just this, like, let's really broaden the scope. And like this training method's so cool. But because it's become that specialist thing, and it's all about faster times, more weight on the bar, it's become specific. And instead, like, whatever, do Fran with a sandbag. I think that sounds great. Like maybe that's more appropriate for you, or get the dumbbells over there, or maybe you shouldn't have any intensity today. And maybe it's similar volume, but instead of 45 reps of each, you're doing 3 sets of 12 of a thruster and a pull up, and you've got a 2-minute bike in between at a moderate pace. I'm like, there's so much that we can do to be creative and to create these environments where people can really thrive and see success for the long term, and still have intensity and still do functional movements by CrossFit's definition, still get stronger. But I just think, like we're saying, I think there's a better way to do it.
It's a really interesting conversation, because it seems kind of what we're getting at here. The approach is that, you know, the competitor, person trying to go to a semi, trying to go to the games, is a specific person. This is not and I think we're pretty clear that it's a less than 1% of the population that's really on that track. You're talking about how the sport has become even more specific in terms of the things that they're doing, versus the everyday athlete that needs maybe more exposure to different variety of things in terms of how they move specifically. And these are two different pools of people completely. The challenge is that a lot of people that join CrossFit want to compete. You know what I mean? They have that competitive mentality. They have that type A, that I want to push myself to a level that I haven't been able to in the past. Or they want to join the open because they want to see how they stack up against that person that they might not be able to ever beat, you know, the phrases of the world, but they want to just see how far. They love that level of comparison, you know, and CrossFit has allowed for that level of comparison that other sports just don't. And it's been a huge knock on gymnastics forever, because we have no ability to form a level of comparison for the everyday athlete versus what you're seeing Simone Biles do in the Olympic Games. And CrossFit does that. So do you miss out on the opportunity to give the everyday athlete the pursuit of something they know that maybe is not achievable, but it's something that allows them to embrace this competitiveness by taking that part out a little bit?
I don't think so. I think it's how we frame the assessment, how we get them started. And honestly, if we have an effective assessment, like I think we have an effective one here, it's something that we would revisit with a competitor. It's not, it's not like a degraded thing. You know, if someone says, hey, you know, I want to snatch 315 pounds, but they're imbalanced on one side to the other, their single leg strength is like all jacked up, I would be like, we need to fix that. Like, let's fix that so you can snatch 315. Or they're like, oh my gosh, you know, like my shoulder flexibility is terrible. We need to improve that. What about your mobility? That's terrible. So we need to improve that. Like, let's do that. So it's not this remediary thing. I think it's becomes part of the culture. So instead of it being, oh man, well, you know, Dave, you know, it's going to be a long road till you can snatch 135 pounds. You know, it's like, well,
It
no,
is a long road till
hey,
I
Dave,
can snatch that.
it's like, hey, Dave, here's why we know that this is really hard for you. And now I'm going to actually give you these really cool tools that are going to get you there faster than just telling you to do it with a PVC. And those movements might not look like what everyone else is doing in class, while those that are snatching are doing it, you know, that it's appropriate for them. But I'm telling you right now that if you do these things, it's going to get you there faster. So I actually think that we can shift that culture, and that everyone's included, and that everyone can still enjoy that journey, but they have a better purchase of what that looks like when they get into it and how to do it.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. It makes me think a little bit about the FMS, the functional movement screen that Gray Cook. Gray Cook, very we had him on the podcast. He came out to our last camp. He's kind of icon when it comes to movement standards around sports medicine, PT world. And I remember taking the FMS course in FCS, and there are 7 movements within the FMS to give people an assessment around their movement patterns, a very easy movement assessment. And I just remember there is a level of comparison. They said that, LeBron James had taken it and got a specific score. And you're like, oh, wow. Like on these basic movements, like a full battery of how a particular athlete at the highest level moves, I can form a comparison versus where I'm at on doing the same assessment. So I love this idea of still being able to assess, gives you as a coach an appropriate indication of where the person is, but they can also use that assessment to pair themselves up versus the best athletes in the world. I think that's a really good way to be able to say, okay, where am I on some basic level movements, and we can kind of build from there.
Yeah, totally. And it's just a culture shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird one for us in CrossFit to say, well, maybe it's not appropriate that someone just comes in any class any day. Maybe we want to set you up for success this way. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe if there's a class that has a different program workout, it is appropriate for you to come. Maybe this workout does work really well for you. Like if it's going to be a 2K row, and then we're going to finish it up with some strict gymnastics work. It's like, well, come on in, man. Like I just give them a heads up. Like, hey, here's what a 2K row would feel like. That's probably not appropriate for you. So I'd start slow. Here's the pace I think you should hold for the first 500, second, third, and fourth. Instead of just like, all right, bro, start yanking on the chain. Should take you about 7 to 10 minutes. Get after it. Might not ever come back.
Sledgehammer approach, man. Sledgehammer approach. You gotta love it.
Let's
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Where does technique is kind of our focus with Power Monkey. Both Chad and I just harp so much on the details, the making things look precise, and making sure that people are moving with quality before they move with intensity, and that mechanical piece of things. Where do you feel like technique work and skill building work fits into your programming or the way that you approach it with your athletes?
Well, that's a great question, because here's the deal, man. I'm just going to be straight up honest. The way that people are going to attend a level 1 or a Power Monkey camp, it's a specific person. That is a person that is looking to improve their technique. They want to get better at the Olympic lifts. They want to get better at the gymnastics thing. If you're a level 1, they're there for a reason. Like they are there, attentive, ready to go. Give me the goods. That's not the reality in everyday class. It's just not. So let's call it what it is, right? So how do we find, again, this balance of, okay, I need to make sure athletes are doing the appropriate movement. I need to make sure that they're moving sound and having fun. So that's why I really like addressing the movement function and not just lighter weight, because instead of me being like, oh my gosh, I can't watch that guy power clean right now, or I can't watch that person overhead squat, like that's hurting my soul, I have another movement that's going to address that appropriately for them. And so it fits that. So I do think there is this real balance there, but I also think it's important to recognize that, right? That some people are in your gym because it's the best hour of their day socially, and they're really not interested in having a perfect something. So if I can teach that throughout the progression, if I can cue them to better movement, but I have athletes that have been with me for 15 years, and I'm not going to harp on them for 5 minutes on a perfect squat or a perfect snatch, or some have that personality, and I will help them with that. And others, I'm just being straight up honest. I'm like, here's the movement that's appropriate for you. You should do today. And in my head as a coach, I'm like, I know that athlete's safe. I know they're having a great time. I know they're going to get a benefit from that. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that was hard for me to accept back in the day. Again, owning a CrossFit gym and coaching those classes is backing off and understanding that not all of these athletes, most of these athletes that are coming into CrossFit class aren't signing up for a weightlifting class. We have weightlifting classes, and those that take a specific interest, they know what they're signing up for. the general CrossFit member isn't signing up for that class. They're not signing up for that level of coaching. They don't want that level of coaching necessarily. They just want to breathe hard. They want to get a good workout in. So completely agree with what you're saying. And I think the common theme with everything that we've talked about today is balance, balancing and speaking to the person that's in front of you, giving the person that's in front of you what they most need, whether that be, just helping them get a better workout in, or whether that be helping them compete in the CrossFit Games.
Yeah. And I think it just gets back to exactly like we talked about, knowing what that athlete needs and why they need it. It's all the more reason that that's so important. I think it just gets back to that same thing, like all that much more important to know what's appropriate for them and not. And let people, it's going to sound crazy, but like let people bias their workouts if they want to. If people enjoy training to go run a marathon or something like that, or if they want to go to a powerlifting meet, but they love the culture of the gym, help them bias their workout. Have them do something where it completely changes the rep scheme and the loading that they would get to meet those goals, and they can still be in the community. I think that was like taboo within our community for a long time. It's like, well, biasing the programming, it's not true CrossFit anymore. But we've come to realize that sometimes it's important to give people what they want for their goals, especially if we're a strength and conditioning facility, which I view us as that, I guess, more now than just a CrossFit gym. So we should be able to provide that service for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that's most likely what brought that athlete to want to run the marathon or compete in the powerlifting competition is CrossFit. So CrossFit has brought all these people in, changed their lives, made their life better, made them healthier. Again, a greater chance of health and longevity. And I love what you said. If they have specifically picked out gymnastics or weightlifting or powerlifting or whatever, rowing, whatever that may be, give it to them, help them do that, put them in a weightlifting class or a powerlifting class or whatever else that may be, and let CrossFit be that introduction to all of these other disciplines that are included in CrossFit.
Yeah, and I think a good way to think of it to sort of, because here's what I think the crux of this conversation becomes is, I think either athletes that are training or gym owners that are sort of feeling this way, but are maybe scared to say they feel this way, is just giving yourself permission to understand that, like, you don't have to abandon ship with CrossFit by expanding your territory, right? So like if we have this fitness map, Spencer and I talk about this a lot. If we have this map of fitness, we stay like right here, we can still stay on the same map, but expand our territory a lot. And when we allow ourselves to think like that and have this conversation like these in a positive way, I think it can really do a lot of good to help people understand, like, oh my gosh, like this can look different and it is sustainable, but it still has all the stuff that I love and it still has things that I really benefit from. And those things could be different for each athlete. For some athlete, that might be a level of intensity or specific movements, and for others, it might not be. But gosh, I think that those things are like so important to embrace. And yeah, don't be afraid to expand the territory of what your fitness looks like and how you implement the training program.
Yeah, I love it. Love this conversation. And I think that things are changing. I'm hearing more and more coaches and athletes talk about these types of things. And especially when someone like you, Chris, with your name and your background comes in and is making these statements, I think it's going to go a long way to help athletes and just us within CrossFit and humans in general be in a better place to get really what most of them are ultimately there for. Again, it's to enjoy the time that they have for that hour, get a good workout in, and be healthier in the long run.
For sure. Yeah.
Is it possible to ask one more? I know we're getting close to the end here, and I have a question I want to ask, and I'm sure you've answered it a million times, but I got to ask it about the Spiel bar. It's I'm jealous. I absolutely love that thing. I wish it was something that I created. It's absolutely my favorite bar ever. If I go into the gym, it's the first thing I look for. I go into the gym and I see whether or not the gym that I'm in has a Spiel bar. Can you just talk a little bit about the creation of that? Why you thought that was a needed, piece of equipment and how you put your kind of your stamp on it?
Yeah, I mean, so one, this is way back working with Rogue. All the rigs they made had like the double bar. So like instead of the gusset, they had the double bar. I was like, well, you can't really do a bar muscle up on that. So that, and then when we opened our gym, Rogue was only, I think, gosh, I think they were like just barely making like bumper plates and rings. You know, it was like nothing. They didn't have
Hmm.
pull-up rigs yet. So I hit up a buddy of mine that's a welding engineer, and he said, well, hey, we can build this thing out of galvanized plumbing pipe. And so we went to Home Depot and got all these T's and unions, and he figured out this way to basically just wind this pull-up bar together because it mounted to the wall and I didn't need any uprights for it. And it was just bare steel. It was galvanized plumbing pipe. So that's all I used. That's all I started on. And when I got to powder coat bars, I was like, this feels terrible. I they're slippery, or like I don't like them. Like this stinks. So we were talking with Rogue and Bill and Katie are awesome. And I was like, hey, what if we just had like a bare steel bar and you guys put the gussets on the side? And they're like, hey, yeah, let's do it. And so yeah, that was that. It was just a suggestion to them, and they were awesome enough to give it a run. And yeah, that's all we have here.
It's the
Shocker.
best bar, and obviously from a gymnastics perspective, not having a double bar, being able to have a good grip, be able to do bar muscle ups without any impedance is just absolutely critical. So thank you for getting Rogue on board with that particular piece of product, because it's an absolute necessity for every gym out there.
Of course.
Um, Chris, I appreciate the time today, man. It's always good to chat with you. I hate that it's been so long since we've seen you in person, but hopefully we can get you back out to Power Monkey Camp again in the future. We'd love to having you out when you were with us a few years ago. Before we jump off, a couple of last minute kind of rapid fire questions, if you're cool.
Yeah.
First one is, what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Oh gosh. I mean, my heart of hearts weightlifting, but I can't do it much anymore.
I'm
Well,
giving you
let's
that
leave it at
point.
that. Let's leave it at
Yeah,
that.
you
We'll,
you
we'll,
get you get that point, Chad. You get that point for sure. I was hoping, that wrestlers and gymnasts have a lot of commonality, so I was hoping that wrestler mentality might kick in a
I
gymnastics answer,
know.
but I'll give it to you. All right, Chad, that's yours. That's breaks my heart to hear Spealler going with weightlifting, but it is what it is. Um, any guests that you think would be great for us to interview? Somebody you maybe come across recently, or somebody you think would be a good interview for us?
Spencer Nix.
All right.
Most people, yeah, he's a great dude. Most people don't know him, but he and I have talked so much about this content. So he's actually got a really cool mindset toward his gym, where he is into the cognitive research, and he's got a master's in neuroscience. He's really smart, and he's also taking like fitness and blending it in with like the mental side and healthy humans as a whole. So anyway, Spencer Nix he's a really great tool, great resource out there.
oh yeah,
Awesome.
Spencer. Yeah, very, very old school there. Not a name that, like you
Yeah.
said, not a name that you hear too much anymore, but I definitely remember him from back in the day. And maybe he was one of the instructors at my level one. I'm not sure if he
Yeah.
was doing it back then, but I think he was. I feel like he was. But anyway, Chris, next question. Any books you've come across recently that you think our listeners would benefit from? Doesn't have to be fitness
Oh,
related.
yeah, it's gonna sound silly. Boundaries with kids. It's not just
Hmm.
for those with parents, but also it helps us learn how to create healthy boundaries for um those that we have. Like if you guys are affiliate owners or employ and have employees, or gosh, even if you're employed and having a boss, I think understanding how
Mm.
to effectively have boundaries that are healthy and create a better relationship. It's a good tool to check into.
Awesome. That's a recommendation that we haven't yet, so we appreciate that. We'll add that to our list for sure. But Chris, it's
Yeah.
been an absolute pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you for joining us. Do you have anything coming up that you want folks to know about, or where can we keep up with you?
Like we're gonna actually probably I don't know if it's a smart thing, but I'm all about progression like we're talking about. So we're gonna be doing a big rebrand in the next probably 3 to 4 months. And
Hmm.
Spiel Programming is gonna kind of come underneath Park City Fit. And we're just gonna have it be all one thing, kind of taking my
Hmm.
name off of it, which some people might think that's nuts. Maybe it is, I don't know. But I,
Hmm.
I just wanna take that, and we're gonna start to offer for that online platform as we move forward. Right now, you can find it all at spielprogramming.com. But in the coming 4 months, we're going to offer assessments for people to take as individuals. So you guys know what workout options might be more appropriate for you. Everything that we talked about, we're trying to implement that into the online community. So that, and then gosh, if any of us local, January 7th, we're having a cool, just old school throwdown at Park City Fit called the Heritage Series. Go Ruck is sponsoring it. And it's just going to be a fun throwdown, no judging, just come with friends, do 3 workouts throughout the day. We're raffling off a Rogue Echo sled, a Burton throwback snowboard, get people outside, get some Go Ruck swag. Bub Naturals is helping us out. So yeah, if you're around Park City, January 7th, swing by.
That's awesome, man. I love the continual push to be better. That's basically what it's all about for anyone running a business, and trying to help other people. But for those athletes out there that you're in the gym and just doing your thing, let's push to be better. But to our listeners out there, as always, we very much appreciate you listening in. Be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, Dave Durante, and Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.